It is National Signing Day week here at 24/7 Sports. Alan Trieu, national recruiting analyst at 24/7 Sports, joins me, Blair Angulo, to discuss Ohio State's 2024 recruiting class. Ranks number 4 right now nationally, number 1 among Big Ten programs. A lot to like, Alan, but who are some top players that you will be having your eyes on as these players start arriving on campus?
Yeah, well, I think I'd be thrown out of the industry if I didn't talk about Jeremiah Smith first, right? That you don't get any more top recruit than the number one guy in the country. And he's a guy who Ohio State had to fight to keep at the end, but did a really, really good job recruiting him throughout the process and recruiting him really right up until that early signing period where he was waiting until late in the day to sign. But with him, they get an outstanding player with the size, the skill set and the speed to come in and play right away. They're losing Marvin Harrison Jr. to the NFL draft. I think Jeremiah Smith can help fill that role. He is as good of a player as there is in this class and has been really since his freshman year. He has every tool in the book, and he's going to a place that is used to having an outstanding wide receiver core. So he's going to get to work personally with Brian Hartline, who has developed a number of guys into NFL draft picks. So he's a very, very safe bet, I think, to be an instant impact player, an impact player throughout his Ohio State career, and then an early draft choice when it comes to the NFL draft in the next couple of years. When you talk about Ohio State, you also have to talk about their defensive backfield. As great as they've had at the wide receiver position, they've also consistently put defensive backs and cornerbacks specifically into the early rounds of the NFL draft. And I think in this class, you have several guys who can do that, including Aaron Scott from Springfield, who they got in an in-state battle with Michigan and Oregon. So even though he was an in-state guy, they had to fight to keep him inside the state. Michigan did a great job recruiting him. He said Oregon was his dream school. I want to say he had Oregon bed sheets and comforters and other things in his bedroom, and Ohio State keeps him at home. He's a top 40 guy in the entire country, a track guy with outstanding speed, has great size, played at a great high school program. So I think he has all the tools to be one of the next Ohio State early draft picks at cornerback. He's joined by Bryce West in this class. So they have a duo there of in-state kids who they had to fight to keep in the state of Ohio. And I think both of those guys will end up being starters and possible NFL players at Ohio State.
You mentioned Jeremiah Smith and the ability for him to be as ready-made as we've seen a receiver in recent memory, to be able to go to Columbus and step into the rotation right away. Well, how about the guys that are going to be tasked with getting him the football, not only in practice, but once they see the field? And that's the quarterbacks. Julian Sayin, the 5-star who had signed with Alabama, decides to reopen his process once that coaching change happens down in Tuscaloosa, but he is headed to Columbus. He's going to be a big-time playmaker. And then Air Noland, another player who was at the Elite 11 finals last summer competing with Julian Sayin, who won MVP, but Air Noland is no slouch. He's a left-hander with a soft touch. Reminds a lot of people of Michael Penix and what he was able to do at the college level, not only in the Big Ten, but obviously on his run over at Washington. Smooth delivery, repeatable mechanics, I think composed outside the pocket, and really capable of getting the ball downfield when he rolls out. I think he's going to be a terrific fit for what Ryan Day and that offensive staff like to do, no matter the fact that he has to now compete against Julian Sayin and fight for snaps with guys like Will Howard and the other quarterbacks that they have in that room. Aaron Nolan has a lot of capability to be a tremendous playmaker for the Buckeyes. Those are some of the top players in the class. Allen, I know there's a lot to like here. There's so many stars in this group, but there could be some hidden gems here that maybe we're sleeping on.
Yeah, the first guy I'm going to touch on is a 4-star and was a heavily recruited player in Ian Moore, offensive lineman out of the state of Indiana. So he may be not quite befitting of this category, but I just think he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit because the class is so top heavy that a guy like Ian doesn't get enough attention. I think he's been an outstanding high school player, comes from a really, really good high school program, good athlete. We've had a chance to see him at several Under Armour camps, was a top performer there since he was a young prospect. This is a position of need. This is a position where Ohio State needed to get some players who could maybe play at least by year 2, and with him being 6'6", already pushing 320 pounds, already strong, good technical base. I think he has a good chance to come in and after maybe a redshirt year or a developmental year, be able to push for a starting job in his second year at Ohio State. They also did a really good job, I thought, late in the cycle of finding guys as seniors who were committed to other schools and filling positions of need. At Ohio State, usually they somewhat get their pick of the litter, but they don't rest in their evaluations. And I think that was particularly true on the defensive line, where they had a real need and were able to flip Dominic Kirks, who was committed to Washington for most of the process. They had a kind of an ongoing process with him. He visited for a game in the fall, then he bypassed signing in the early period. Obviously, you had Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama, which didn't hurt the Buckeyes' cause to land him, but they stayed in touch with him, got him up for a late visit. We bumped him several times throughout the process. Former basketball player who I think is really athletic. Great find by them. And then Gabe Van Sickle, we talked about that need on the offensive line. They went and plucked him from the West Michigan area, Coopersville High School. He was committed to Northwestern, a school that, if you look back, they've had tremendous success on the offensive line recently with guys like Rashawn Slater and Peter Skoronski, to the point now where I think when the Wildcats evaluate, take, and sign an offensive lineman, other schools take notice. That's definitely the case here with Van Sickle. Really outstanding high school player, also playing high school basketball right now. So a very good athlete who I think can be a little bit of a swing guy for them, can play guard, can play tackle, but a guy who maybe doesn't get a lot of the attention in this class with so many top end guys at the very top of this class. Maybe you forget about a Gabe Van Sickle, but again, when Northwestern takes a guy on the offensive line, usually in recent history, that's turned out.
Ryan Day is stacking elite on elite on elite, and Lou Holtz might be covering his ears right now. But this is the 5th consecutive top 5 finish for the Buckeyes in the rankings, and they have 18 of their 22 are blue chippers. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for some of these guys to see the field right away. Alan, who are some instant impact candidates for the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I think it's so easy. You got to start with Jeremiah Smith. I mean, he is ready-made, as you said, as polished and as college-ready of a wide receiver as we've seen come out of the high school ranks in the last couple of cycles. And obviously, there is some availability there, too, with Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the NFL. Ohio State has stockpiled great talent at the receiver room. So it's not like the cupboard's bare by any stretch. So it's not like he's just going to waltz in there and beat out some of the guys that are already there and returning. But I do think you find a way to play him. He's the #1 player in the country. He's got college-ready size. He's got a college-ready skill set. I would think that you're going to see Jeremiah Smith on the field quite a bit next year. Ohio State has obviously had really good success, I think, with balancing a crowded wide receiver room, making sure enough guys get touches, enough guys get snaps, and I think they'll continue to do that. I don't think Jeremiah Smith signed with the intention of waiting or redshirting, and so I think they'll find a way to get him involved a little bit next year. Exactly how much remains to be seen, but I would think you will see a good amount of Jeremiah Smith. And then I mentioned the defensive line being a position of need. They got a boost with some of the guys who could have declared for the draft, like Jack Sawyer returning to school, but I still think a guy like Edric Houston could find his way into the rotation. Very talented guy who comes from the state of Georgia, was right there on the cusp with 5 stars, our number 33, so the highest ranked 3-star in the entire country. I thought he showed himself well at several events. The reviews from him down in San Antonio were good. 6'3", 269 pounds, can play on the edge, can give you some snaps inside, can move around the line of scrimmage. But when you look at his size and athleticism, and also coming into a room where I think they could use some rotational bodies, this is a guy that, when I look at the top guys in Ohio State's class, right behind Jeremiah Smith, I think the best chance for a player to come in and make an impact and at least see the field a little bit, get into the rotation, is Edric Houston. So super talented, another guy they had to fight off schools for at the very last second. They keep him, and I think that'll pay dividends as soon as this fall.
That comes with the territory when you're recruiting at Ohio State, battling against some of these other blue blood programs. And it's remarkable because I think we forget that they had Dylan Raiola committed at one point in this class as well. They suffered decommitments down the stretch from guys like Jeremiah McClellan and Justin Scott. So this could have even been an even bigger and better recruiting class. But when we look at the future, Alan, and we look at maybe that hump that they need to get over to capture a crystal ball, how does this class fit into what Ryan Day wants to accomplish there in that new look Big Ten?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what's already brought them the success. We've talked about how good their receivers have been, how good the defensive line has been, how good the secondary's been, and there's more of that. I think Aaron Nolan is the guy that has a chance to make the difference here. I think that, when you look at, they had a top recruit in Kyle McCord, who ended up transferring. You had Quinn Ewers in there before that. So I think having a guy, signing a high school quarterback and being able to have him there on campus, develop him, keep him in the program for a couple of years, I think that's going to be very key to this class success. So when I look at this class top to bottom, I think this is the rich getting richer. This is a very classic, typical Ohio State at most of the positions. But I think the linchpin, the guy who can really elevate that, is Aaron Nolan, who you touched on earlier.
The Buckeyes trying to take the next step and recapture the Big Ten championship in this new era of college football. Alan, thank you so much for joining us. You can catch all his coverage on Ohio State Buckeyes recruiting in the 2025 class and beyond over at bucknuts.com.